Welcome to Perspectives Online and on air from WFSU Public Media. I'm Tom Flanigan. This program, using the Zoom platform that we have all come to know and love, was pre-recorded on Tuesday, November 17th for playback on Thursday, November 19th, with the program to appear on both WFSU FM 88.9 and the WFSU Public Media Facebook page. Back in the BC era, BC meaning in this context before COVID, Governor Ron DeSantis issued an executive order pledging to move the state of Florida from the 24th to the first rank in the nation in terms of workforce readiness and the quality of technical training provided to the workforce. But of course, now with the pandemic raging, the goal of having more people prepared to take advantage of the jobs that are available has become even more important. So today on Perspectives, we're going to be talking about what's being done to better match the work that needs to be done with the people who are ready and able to do that work, and a host of other related topics that connect to that as well. So let's get to work, as the saying goes, and meet our panel. We'll start off with Henry Mack, Chancellor for Career, Technical, and Adult Education with the Florida Department of Education. And Henry, thank you so much for joining us, sir. Really appreciate it.
Tom, thanks for having me. Very excited.
We are as well, sir. Michelle Dennard is also joining us, President and CEO of CareerSource Florida. Michelle, thank you for taking time out from your busy schedule to join us for the conversation.
Thanks for having me, Tom. This is a great conversation. I'm happy to be part of it.
And we appreciate your participation, certainly, Michelle, as we do a great friend of this program and of the WFSU Public Media family, Kim Moore, who returns Vice President for Workforce Innovation, Tallahassee Community College, and one of the busiest people that we know. Talk about working. Kim, you put us all to shame. You make us seem like slackers. Thank you for coming back on the show and sharing your insights and input today.
Always exciting to be here with you, Tom. Love it.
Well, let's start here again with, as we said at the outset, the executive order issued by Governor DeSantis back in January that seemed, boy, that was a should we say, aggressive kind of stance to go from 24th to 1st in terms of workforce readiness and everything that that entails. Henry Mack, let's start with you from your viewpoint here. How did you receive that set of marching orders, if you will, and how did your organization start planning for implementing that, really putting it into practice and effect?
Yeah, sure. It was the reception, at least, of the executive order was one of initial excitement. We know how valuable a career and technical education or workforce education can be for an individual. It can be completely transformative. We know that university trajectory or the baccalaureate degree is an excellent and viable option for many, but we know that there are other options or other on-ramps for residents across the state of Florida, and career and technical education is one of them. And so the order charged us as an entire state, I think, to think disruptively and innovatively about how we are helping residents prepare themselves for the future of work. At that time, we were dealing with an economy before COVID, right? It was robust, it was humming, it was firing on all cylinders. But with COVID, we know that disruption occurred and many people lost their jobs. Many people who were in the hospitality sector or in sectors that were less, I guess, maybe stable. These individuals need immediate upskilling and reskilling. And so thankfully, because the order sort of kickstarted the conversation about the value of career and technical education and workforce readiness and training, we were well positioned, I would submit, to deal with the pandemic and able to nimbly sort of pivot to engage residents who were displaced and who were disrupted through quality educational offerings and programs at our public post-secondary institutions, our technical colleges, and our state colleges like TCC. And I would respectfully defer to Vice President Moore about how that looks like on the ground, because TCC has been nothing short of like amazing and rocking it in terms of, again, not only getting us towards the goal, but helping so many residents that were impacted by the pandemic pivot and acquire new skills so that they may ultimately thrive.
That's a beautiful segue to Kim Moore of Tallahassee Community College. Even before the pandemic struck, Kim, you folks had been working very diligently on creating an entire infrastructure of programs at TCC that could take people who maybe had been, I don't know, a data analyst in the Florida Department of Revenue and giving them a new career lease on life when it came to technical kinds of things. This was nothing new to you guys, but now with not only an executive order, but a changing landscape caused by the pandemic. How did TCC and how is TCC responding?
Well, I will tell you, certainly the pandemic did create opportunity, but it's one that I'm excited to take hold of being in the realm of workforce development. So when we think about those vulnerable industries that the chancellor alluded to, whether it was retail, hospitality, lodging, accommodations, we know that those are the hardest hit, not only locally, but statewide and nationally, 40%, right, of the folks that were in those areas. We knew that we had to reach them and reach them with an opportunity that met their immediate needs. So thankful for the campaign that was launched by Chancellor Mack. When you think about Florida's Get There, he's the whole push. We, of course, put under that umbrella, be essential. Not only could you think about pivoting and reskilling, but what if you could do it in 90 days? 90 days or less that you would get back to the normalcy that you want. That's exactly what we stood up. Over 50 plus programs that allow you to do just that. And I think for me, and certainly for folks in education and workforce development, we view this as an opportunity for others to see firsthand what we've always known, that workforce development has that ability to meet people where they are and at the same time provide that workforce that employers need.
That preparation is so critical. But if I can pivot over to you, Michelle Dennard, when it comes to the availability of jobs, particularly in an economic downturn, which is precipitated by the pandemic, are there enough positions available to take the people who are retraining themselves in order to meet new opportunities as they come up? Are those opportunities there?
There are opportunities throughout the state, particularly those businesses who provide essential services present career opportunities. And there are great opportunities for Floridians whose jobs have been impacted in the service sector. What we hear from employers right now is that they want what we call employability, soft skills. I like to call them resilient skills these days. Skills like problem solving and agility and the ability to adapt to new environments. Those are all skills that we're all honing now. As our environments changed, as work has changed, individuals are working in varied places and in varied fashions. We also know that Floridians who have experience in the service sector have developed those skills in a really masterful way. The best way to learn those skills oftentimes is in the service sector, where you learn how to listen to customers, how to respect authority, how to be reliable, how to show up on time. And those are skills that are in demand in any industry, particularly in those that have provided essential services and remained open during the pandemic. So as Kim and Henry both mentioned, the ability to reach those individuals and provide them with opportunities for a new career path is our opportunity through this pandemic.
Chancellor Mack, one thing that we have heard repeatedly for years and years, how even dating back into, oh God, I'm dating myself here again, the 1950s, to get a good job, get a good education. And that was, as far as the conventional wisdom concerned, synonymous with a collegiate diploma of some kind, whether it was an associate's degree or you go for the bachelor's or more advanced degree types of things. And there still seems to be a hangover from that, in that particularly parents, if I can name check a particular group of people who may be playing into this here, discourage their kids from going into the trades or the technical career opportunities because, well, that's for people who aren't smart or are lower class. I mean, any number of prejudicial things that we may pull out of the hat here. How does the Florida Department of Education pivot to say, hey, parents, these are good jobs. These are good paying jobs. These are jobs that cannot be readily offshored or automated. And it's something that your kids really need to check out as a possibility.
Yeah, Tom, you couldn't have said it better yourself in terms of what we need to say, namely changing the narrative around the value of a career in technical education. And the department, thankfully under Richard Corcoran and the governor, frankly, through his executive order, started to begin to sort of help us shift and think about anew how we are to rebrand, reimagine, and change the narrative around career in technical and workforce education. And so we're doing that. Case in point is the GetThereFL.com campaign. The Get There campaign is an attempt to not only enroll students in viable, industry-driven, short-term credentialing opportunities so as to help with economic recovery and prosperity, but it's also thoroughly and fundamentally a reimagining of how we're thinking and picturing career and technical education. To your point, Tom, it's not a lesser than pathway. It's not something opposed to traditional academics. It's not for those who are not as academically adept, right? It is an equally viable on-ramp to economic self-sufficiency and happiness. The needle that though needs to be threaded, and this is going to be very difficult for me to do, but I need to do it. The needle that needs to be threaded is this. The COVID pandemic has shown us that workers who are less educated see higher unemployment. Workers with just a high school diploma or with less than a degree, less than an Associate of Science degree, or less than a baccalaureate degree, witnessed higher unemployment. They were twice as likely to be laid off. In fact, all of those who were laid off or filed for unemployment since the start of COVID, over 63% were those without a high school diploma or without an actual degree. So we know the degree is still the ideal. It's still the gold standard. However, we need to do better by way of articulating the on-ramps or the pathways toward that higher credentialing goal, which should be the goal. It's still the ideal. That's not to devalue, however, and this is the threading of the needle, that's not to devalue how you may reach that goal through some viable, excellent, valuable, potentially transformative trade pathways or CTE credentials that are offered in institutions like TCC, right? So it is fundamentally, and I know I'm going on here, a both and proposition, and one that the governor and the commissioner thankfully get. And that's what we're trying to do here at the Department of Education, is not only sort of reimagine and rebrand, but literally restructure the system so that people can see how a career in technical education or workforce education can be an excellent on-ramp toward economic self-sufficiency and professional success.
Very fortunately, though, Henry, we have institutions in Florida. I think we have, 28 of them, if I'm not mistaken, that can provide a combination of professional certifications in a number of trades, but also academic diplomas, which will fulfill what you talked about there.
That's the game changer with our state college system, which is incidentally part of the entire education system in the state of Florida that makes us #1 in higher education, according to US News World and Report. We want to become #1 in workforce education, however, and the state colleges get it. They have the game, they have the ability to do it, they have the pathways, and clearly they have the personnel and leadership to help us get there. I would be remiss, and I know I'm occupying a lot of time here, if we didn't have CareerSource Florida at the table too, none of this would work. They are the ones that are connecting displaced residents to education. They are the ones providing resources and funds and scholarships and support and career advisement so that this whole thing can work seamlessly. I don't want to leave us out, and I know that might be a segue, but in any event, it was worth mentioning.
Well, I think that's a wonderful point, and let's combine resources here of Michelle and Kim, that something comes up. There are career opportunities in a particular area. In this case, of course, TCC's service area, which is here in North Florida, and a company, somebody needs a workforce, and they kind of need them fast. Michelle, do you become aware of that and then transmit that over to people like Kim Moore to say, we need X number of folks with the following skill sets, and if you can provide that, they will have employment. Is that the kind of seamless thing we're talking about here?
It is, and it's that cross-sector collaboration between all of our systems, all of our organizations that will help us reach the goals that have been set by our governor, by our institutions. It requires all of us being at the table together. What the CareerSource Florida Network brings to the table many times is exactly what you just mentioned, that business intelligence. So a business can come to a CareerSource Florida Network partner, say, these are the skills that I need. And the wonderful thing about our robust education system and partners in state colleges like Kim is we can go to her, there's a receptive ear, she understands the needs of the business community as well, and we can help connect those Floridians who may have been impacted by COVID-19 or are looking to upskill, reskill, find a new career trajectory, help those individuals be connected with those opportunities. The best part about that is there is a business waiting for them on the other side.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful academic argument, but let's turn that into practical application. Kim Moore, do you get calls from, Michelle or Jim over at CareerSource Capital Region, and you provide essentially workforce ready to go for businesses and other organizations that need them?
Absolutely. So the great part about this is that I've lived, as you know, in the other world, leading the workforce board, and then now in education. So I get to pair both of those. So yes, I get the calls. Matter of fact, I have standing meetings with CareerSource at the local level and talking about that. I mean, an example would be, I got a call this week from an employer and a need that they had. I made sure that we could train in that direction, making sure that we're talking about a talent pipeline for not only present but future. I then made sure I made the connection to CareerSource to ensure that incentives that they had available, that we could pair those and that we could meet that employer's need seamlessly. The idea for me with the great collaboration is that there is no wrong door, whether you're a job seeker or whether you're an employer, no wrong door is the attempt.
There are also organizations, private sector companies that offer, if I'm not mistaken, Henry Mack, apprenticeships, so that can be yet another option that can play into this seamless situation that you're talking about.
Yeah, that was, as Kim was talking, that was top of mind for me, at least in terms of a practical example of how the education system can pivot in a way to produce the kind of talent that employers need, so that we can create apprenticeship programs that are employer-driven, employer-sponsored, meeting industry need, but done in partnership with a post-secondary institution to, again, provide that viable on-ramp toward a possible degree that we know will keep an individual out of, God willing, poverty or any other economic hardship, knowing that that degree is less susceptible to the kind of disruption that we've witnessed from COVID. Apprenticeships and the apprenticeship model is an excellent example of that. Further case in point, the Department of Education here is uniquely positioned as the state apprenticeship agency. In most states, the apprenticeship office resides with the Department of Commerce or the Department of Economic Opportunity here in Florida. Though a while back, the decision was made to move it to the Department of Education, knowing that apprenticeship can be an excellent, again, on-ramp toward a post-secondary degree or opportunity to, again, provide that kind of sustainability and that career trajectory, which we know, education and career itself, career itself is a lifelong sort of process, learning process. And so that kind of synergy and partnership is, quite frankly, amazing and inspiring.
And from the perspective of the apprentice, it is certainly a very viable option, because unlike folks who have to go into a full-scale educational experience that may not give them the time to work to make money, with the apprenticeship, at least they can generate some income while that is going on.
Earn, and learn. I wish I would have done it that way. I wish I would have been earning and learning to avoid the debt that I'm still in from my college loans. Had I had done it all over again, I would have gone to a state college, perhaps gotten an apprenticeship, so that I'm not still, paying hundreds of dollars to, Sally and Fannie Mae or whoever they are.
That is one of the most one of the highest obstacles, I think, to people moving forward nowadays is just that hangover of student indebtedness that follows people around for years and years. But that is something we can talk about in another program for sure. Hey, by the way, if you miss all or part of a Perspectives program, it is available online, not only on our WFSU.org website, but also our WFSU Public Media Facebook page. We try to have the most recent program up in both locations just as soon as we can after it actually airs on the radio, so you can hear, and in the case of Facebook, actually see the folks who are talking to you. And that's always lots of fun, especially for old folks like me who are kind of brought up in radio and we don't have to care what we look like, which is interesting. Anyway, we are talking about workforce development and an executive order penned by Governor Ron DeSantis back in January to move Florida from position number 24 up to position number 1 nationally when it came to workforce preparation and technical training and those kinds of things. An expert panel to address that here. Michelle Dennard, back to again, what is available right now? We know that the economy here in Florida is stumbling, perhaps not as badly as in some parts of the country. And here in the capital region, we seem even more isolated or immune, if you will, to some of the impact of the pandemic. We are coming back steadily towards, if not full employment, certainly better employment than a lot of other places. But what are the hot jobs right now that you are seeing statewide, particularly as Henry had mentioned before, the tourism sector in Central and South Florida, which has been hit so hard by this situation?
It's a great question, and one that we're watching across the state. We know that the healthcare industry is still in need of individuals to work in that field, as is the IT sector, two fields that were growing throughout the pandemic. And the need for upskilling and reskilling of existing employees and providing education pathways for individuals interested in entering those fields are fantastic opportunities really throughout the state right now. But again, what it comes down to are the skills that an individual learns, like adaptability and agility. Our environments continue to change every day, and employers continue to value those skills, not just to meet their needs today, but it helps provide that talent pipeline they're looking for. If I need to reskill my employees as my technology changes, as my business needs to continue to pivot, to stay open and thriving, that ability of employees to move with the employer, to change to what that employer needs from them, is still the most in-demand skills that we're hearing from employers today.
A big challenge for you, Kim Moore, because if you have people who are trained, let's just say HVAC repair, and boy, you got a crackerjack force that you just got ready there at Tallahassee Community College, and 6 months down the line, HVAC jobs, if not disappearing, certainly are less than what they were. And the new hot thing is, oh, I don't know, automobile repair. Can you make that pivot? Can you get you folks ready to handle both kinds of situations?
Absolutely. So the great thing, again, why I love my job is that you have to keep a pulse on what's going on. So you're always having conversations with employers. You're looking at labor market data. You're realizing that it's not off the shelf and that literally you are creating and becoming an extension of HR, whether it's HVAC or, other industries. So absolutely, that's what we pride ourselves in. And that's part of telling the story. And I think the great message that Henry and team and Michelle, they're leading across the state of Florida, that when we talk about education's ability to meet employers where they are and really become a viable partner to creating that workforce and planning for what their future will be, those are the conversations that we want to have. Those are the ones that get me excited because it challenges our system and then we deliver over and over again. And again, I just think that it's really a great opportunity for us and one that we've certainly not turned down, even in this new environment. We've been forced to pivot as well, and now we're focusing in on the remote worker. That wasn't a topic previously, but now we're making sure that employers who have turned the dial and now have a remote workforce that we're providing training that meets that need as well.
How quickly did you turn that program around? We've been doing this stuff for what, 8 months?
2 weeks, and same thing with our Be Essential. If you're in tune, you can make it happen. I won't tell you that it's not short, short hours, it's long hours, but we believe in our community, and we know that we are an integral part of this whole community reemployment plan that will move our community and certainly the state too ahead. So you do what you got to do, and that's just great being a part of that overall effort to make it happen.
I'll give your team a call later on. I got to adjust my settings. I have no idea what I'm doing here. So,
well, we can even help you reimagine that in a great way, right?
It looks like you're doing pretty well. Your microphone game is on point there with that setup you got going on. So it looks okay to me.
Yeah. Well, Henry Mack, thank you for chipping in, and I appreciate the comment on their old school analog stuff here. But whatever works, sometimes you got to improvise. It's not just, though, prospective job seekers that need to be educated here. How does the state of Florida go out and educate employers that perhaps they need to take a different tack in trying to locate the workforces that they need, particularly if they come here to Florida, instead of just spewing out on social media or any of the other, professional journals or however they usually recruit workforces, that maybe the Department of Education or CareerSource Florida or places like Tallahassee Community College need to be contacted by them to get the workforce that they want?
That's a great question. I think I might pivot a bit into ask Michelle to maybe take the lead on that one. From an education perspective, however, we know that it is incumbent upon us to have industry at the table. So when we are designing our curriculum, when we are designing our degree programs, or at the state level, when we are refining and designing programs at the state level, which eventually are adopted by local institutions, we must have industry at the table. And in those conversations, we are having conversations with them about their expectations of their future employees so that they know, for example, when they post a job occupation, they are posting it with the necessary skills, with the necessary or correct credentials for the actual work that needs to be done, so that there is true alignment between the signaling or the demand and then the education supply and the learning outcomes embedded within our programs. So from the Department of Education's perspective, we're having those conversations. I'm lucky enough to sit on the CareerSource Florida board with Michelle, so we are tightly partnered and coupled at the hip. I'm also a member of the Talent Development Council, a statewide council that is dedicated to really, frankly, the post-secondary education attainment goals. So we have the Florida Council of 100 on there. We have Enterprise Florida. We have the various stakeholders from industry so that we are ensuring for maximum alignment. If I may pivot back to a question that you asked, Tom, which was a great one about new employment opportunities out there. I remember a report that CareerSource authored around freelancers and the gig economy, really how while Florida has traditional full-time occupations to the tune, I think, of around maybe 300 to 400,000 open positions now, with 700,000 people still looking for work, we have alignment work to do. What's not necessarily always captured is the extent to which our economy relies on freelancing and the gig sort of worker and economy. And it's interesting to think about that and how education plays a role in training individuals, to your point, Tom, to pivot and to move and to adjust within that sort of gig economy. The thing that we were trying to do most recently here at the Department of Education to help the education system adjust for that was sponsoring over $1 million grant opportunity for entrepreneurship education and training. So we set aside $1 million out of our federal dollars to give away to education institutions to help them cultivate, incubate potential entrepreneurs. And whether or not students start their own business is sort of irrelevant. I care more about the skills that they acquire as a result of trying to start a business. Things like mental agility, creativity, risk propensity, and the ability to pivot. So to the extent that we can appreciate the gig economy and how freelancing is sort of taking over with about 50% of US workers by 2027 being freelancers and embedding these kinds of entrepreneurial related competencies, I guess this was a long-winded answer to telling the world how the system is attempting to adapt to the needs of employers. And I think if I may defer quickly to Michelle to sort of maybe piggyback on some of those comments, since I know we're thinking the same thing.
Absolutely, we are, and especially due to COVID-19, the future of work is here. And we see increases in individuals that choose to work in the gig economy, choose to freelance, choose to be entrepreneurs. We've also entered a time where many workers value flexibility over stability, where climbing the corporate ladder is no longer the American dream, but the ability to make your own hours, to work independently is. So we know that those entrepreneurial skills, the ability to equip individuals with education that propels them into that entrepreneurial space is critical. We know that sector of our workforce will continue to grow. We've seen firsthand that automation and information technology and connectivity have disrupted jobs from all sectors and are creating ones that we hadn't even envisioned yet. So as we have been forced through COVID-19 to consider how we educate and train Florida workers and how we adapt our models in business for products and services, it's asked us to think about how we weather these dramatic shifts to help Floridians get back to work, to help businesses recover, and ultimately chart their paths to economic stability and prosperity.
Well, Kim Moore, that brings us to Tallahassee Community College. Do you guys have programs like, I don't know, Side Hustle 101, or how do you take students and get them into that?
I think you just came up with a new offering for me, but absolutely we do. We've lived in the entrepreneurial, I call it, arena for some time. So yes, our initiative Spark, and it's about sparking creativity. But what probably what spurred that for us is that we recognize that a number of our students were coming to us already with the side hustle or entrepreneurs already. Again, as Henry mentioned, it's not so much that we're thinking that everyone's going to become a small business, but it's clearly the entrepreneurial mindset that speaks to problem solving, being able to, I tell people, think your way out of a box, being able to do that matters, whether you're an employee or an employer. The other part of that is we also recognize that 70% or greater of our businesses in the Tri-County area have 10 or fewer employees. They're entrepreneurs. They are small business owners. So we recognize that there's both opportunity to provide them with the tools that they need, as well as for our students to receive those and become a well-rounded employer or employee. So yes, absolutely on target with that notion.
Okay, that brings us then to a look ahead and from the 30,000-foot overview. Henry Mack, if we can look at Florida Department of Education, what kind of discussions take place within that big building downtown of, okay, here is where we are, here is where we need to be, not only in response to the governor's executive order, but just how the future is developing in a rather chaotic time when we don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. What are you guys talking about, and how are you trying to put like the career paths of the future together from your angle?
That's a great question. So top of mind, I think not only with respect to how to adjust to the COVID pandemic and how to help residents get upskilled, reskilled, and re-enrolled in a quality post-secondary education so that they can get employed and remain stably employed and become economically self-sufficient. I mean, that still is priority number one. And the governor put his money where his mouth is. He set aside $35 million of his own governor's emergency education relief funds to help do this, giving scholarship support to institutions so that they can give stipends to students so that adults can have childcare or whatever it is they need to make it possible for them to re-enroll and to get a quality credential. So I think refining that, looking towards the future, I think we need to frankly double down on it. And that's what we're talking about here at the Department of Education. How do we rethink our approach to adult education and re-engaging those adults that need a quality post-secondary degree but don't have one yet? Tom, we have about 1.8 million adults out there in the state of Florida that don't have a high school diploma. We have a couple 100,000 more on top of that that are barely literate, that are functioning at the lowest levels of numeracy and literacy. actually more than couple hundred thousand, close to 1 million. 24% of adults from 16 to 74-year-olds are functioning at or below the lowest levels of numeracy. And for many of them, they don't have a high school diploma. For many of them, they're stuck in intergenerational poverty and immobility. They cannot get out. Their life circumstance and their future and their professional happiness and personal well-being is defined as a function of their neighborhood and zip code. The data bears that out, and that is unfortunate, that is a determinant of their ability to break free and to help those around them out of poverty. We are hyper-focused on that at the department right now. So we are thinking through intervention strategies for early literacy, adult literacy, and adult education, and what we can do to address, frankly, this neglected portion of our state's population. Adult education has not been talked about. You think CTE is sort of the redheaded stepchild of higher education. Talk about adult education, and people's minds go sort of blank. They don't know what it means. They don't know what it entails, but the stakes are high. If we are going to get to #1 in workforce education, and if we are going to be a state that uplifts all lives and achieves economic security and self-sufficiency, we need to be looking at everyone. And I'm talking about economically disadvantaged and neglected communities. So how can we rethink the delivery of education itself so that we are providing services in communities? And I think you're going to be hearing a lot about a self-sufficiency initiative, both from the governor, but also from the Department of Education, with this focus on literacy and what we can do to do things, frankly, differently and anew.
Michelle, I want to get to you in a second, but Kim, that is a beautiful segue into the fact that Tallahassee Community College butts up to the poorest zip code in the entire state of Florida.
Yes.
What kind of outreach can you do to say, hey, all you kids, maybe even hit them up in, I don't know, late elementary, middle school, you don't think that you have a path. Let us show you a path, and here's how you get on it, and we will guide you along the way. This is something that you can do. How do you do that?
I will tell you that we're already doing it, as a matter of fact. So 32304, most impoverished zip code. Monday of next week, our elementary program launches that looks at STEM in a new way that throws in reading as well, because we understand that that's the foundation. We're pairing that up with the middle school outreach that will, Griffin, that's come on board with us as well. We're already in Godby, where we look at the entrepreneurial piece, where we have our faculty that's on site. So we believe that it starts early, whether the conversation is about completing high school or whether it's about exposure to apprenticeship opportunities. But we also believe that it's even more inclusive of that. We know that there are families behind those children. So reaching the families, very much engaged in grassroots efforts. Our grassroots efforts also take us behind the walls. I call it behind the walls. We're in 5 correctional institutions right now providing workforce training. Over 900 plus certifications have been earned. Our efforts, we understand in community, and that it has to be an all hands on deck. Yes, we're going to be focused on the immediate. We need to get people into jobs, get them on a pathway to a career, not just a job. But we also need to be thinking about the pipeline and the generations that are going to come afterwards. So our focus, all inclusive, and again, certainly a point of pride that we're at the level of elementary schools, because who would have thought that, thinking you're K through 20, that you need to get into elementary. You do. It starts early. Mm-hmm.
And Michelle Denard, having more readily employable people available for those jobs that are coming, how much easier does that make the life of CareerSource Florida and its regional employment boards around the state?
That clearly makes it easier for connecting individuals to the right employment opportunity for them. But I so appreciate how Henry and Kim have framed this discussion, because if we're not evaluating inclusive opportunities and connecting with those populations who are underrepresented and underserved, Florida cannot reach its goals in total. And it's both our imperative to be connected to our communities and be sure that we are assisting those individuals who need it. Across the state, CareerSource Florida Network partners also utilize coaching and mentors. So if we can help an individual become enrolled in a training program, we need to stay in contact with that individual, encourage them. many employees, potential employees that we see oftentimes may come to the table with a skills gap, but also a competence gap. They may not be able to envision themselves in a role as an IT professional or a healthcare professional because they just haven't been exposed to those kinds of opportunities before. So if we can work with that individual, keep them engaged in their training opportunity, then their success in being connected with an employer is enhanced for them, and the work of the CareerSource Network is in fact made easier by virtue of having that skilled, trained employee ready for that employer.
And as I guess, a spin-off of apprenticeships moving down the demographic ladder here, Henry Mack, getting more people connected with the educational system at all levels so that young people can see, hey, here are people who look like me, who talk like me, but have achieved success, and they have some ideas on how I can do the same, which may be even more effective than just the regular teachers who, well, we know who the teachers are, and they're going to read out of the book and tell me what they think I ought to know, but to have real life examples and mentors to come into their lives to show them the things that we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's why partners like the Urban League and the Y and the United Way are so important here, because I think many individuals in many of our zip codes that we're focusing on are up against narratives such as you can't, or you shouldn't trust anyone. There are some hard narratives to break through, and that can't happen either passively or from an ivory tower. Right? You need to penetrate the neighborhoods with individuals that they can trust. We need to build bridges in a new way. And that's sort of what the Department of Education is again, thinking through here, how to deliver a quality post-secondary education in a new way, a more accessible way, not believing that sort of you open your doors and they will come, so to speak. We need to think about our engagement strategies. And really, truthfully, that's part of what is behind the Get There campaign. I would imagine Get There 4.0 will eventually address this, but it is, again, an attempt to sort of rebrand and make more accessible the idea of a quality education. To your earlier point, Tom, about CTE, we have the data to back it up, that the more students are exposed to career opportunities at an earlier age, the more likely they are to persist and complete and graduate into a post-secondary institution. In short, the more that they enroll in a CTE program from as early as the 6th grade, the more likely they are to complete. So again, the more that we can sell the story of CTE, hopefully that will then, penetrate the community, infect the minds of others in a good way, so as to show them that they are indeed capable of post-secondary education attainment.
It's what is old is new again. Growing up in a heavily industrialized blue-collar area myself, I remember how the expectancy sets for young people was always, well, you're going to get a job with the railroad just like your dad, or you're going to go into the tire plant like Uncle Eddie and he can get you a good position. That was the expectancy for kids. And it was a real challenge to try to change that so that some people could go on into an academic track later on, because people didn't do that. You didn't know anybody who went to college. Are you crazy? And that's for rich kids. But that changed. And now it sounds like we're kind of changing back again.
Back again to what? Back
to that you have more options, more opportunities to do life than perhaps you had first imagined.
And that's been the song sheet we've been singing through since Commissioner Corcoran became commissioner, is that choice empowers, choice is freeing, choice enables opportunity in ways not otherwise realized. So presenting the choice options out there and to allow students to see for themselves what they want for themselves, to help them actualize their own potential. And that may be a university degree. It may not be. or it may be something in the interim that they can get, that they can then transform their life and then all of a sudden be awakened to the prospect of a higher credential. It's going to look very different for very many people, but the idea is that structuring Florida's education system in an intentional and deliberate way to create that menu of available options that can be tailor-made to the individual so that they can realize for themselves and for their family economic self-sufficiency. That's sort of what we're trying to do here. I know that's very theoretical and very broad and very conceptual, but it really does matter, and we are doing it on a practical local level. Again, I mean, the CareerSource boards and TCC is just one case, sort of in point.
Well, before we go into wrap-up mode, I will ask you, Henry, since we started at 24th on the list, and the governor says we got to hit number 1, how often will those metrics be reevaluated to find out how the heck we're doing on that?
I think I might not answer this question because it's a complex question around data and metrics and measures. So right now, that measure that you're citing is a Lumina measure, which only measures post-secondary degree attainment with a few workforce credentials in there. And that's what we're being set up against with other states. So other states are being held against that measure. So that's more of a post-secondary attainment measure. The workforce education measure is something sort of different. For more on that, please follow the Talent Development Council and the discussions that we're having at the TDC around data, measures, and metrics, and how we're holding ourselves both accountable to the goal and getting at it.
Well,
how was that for a non-answer?
That's great. And if the past is any indicator, Henry, we'll wait for the big news conference where the governor comes out and says, hey, we're number whatever. It'll happen, of course. Michelle Dennard, and again, I'm sorry, I mispronounced your last name there for the first part of the program here. Let's get some final thoughts from you as far as the workforce boards across the state and how they plan to integrate even more cohesively into this whole situation we've been talking about here of reimagining careers for people, essentially.
We know that tenor, that drumbeat is set for us at the state level. So the enhanced collaboration that we have with the Department of Education, with the state college system, has set a tone for CareerSource Florida Network partners throughout the state to be better connected to the local educational institutions, to ensure that we're listening to the needs of business communities in their areas and that they are in touch with them, moving not just at the need of business, but at the speed of business, helping to anticipate their needs, and then working with education partners to ensure that there are curriculum that lines up to those needs. And what I can assure you about the governor's goal is that we are all laser focused on it and working toward it every single day. While the metrics may be a little bit harder to define, as Henry mentioned, we are all focused on it, and that is our goal.
Onward and upward. Kim Moore, since I know you have to run here, let's talk a little bit again about how you see Tallahassee Community College and similar institutions around the state of Florida playing into this as far as being able to essentially respond instantaneously as needs change, because tomorrow is promised to no one, certainly in this era.
I think, again, it's a lofty goal, but one that we will certainly, I believe, achieve and surpass because of the commitment. We see it in our neighbors, we see it in our friends, and there's a reason that we want to do the work that we're doing and why we want to see recovery, why we want to see everybody win. I believe that what you'll see with education going forward and even in the past is that we're creating opportunities, but we're also looking at it from a perspective that it's not a period. It's not one and done. It is lifelong learning. So when you think about our work, yes, we want to achieve that goal, but it's going to continue forward. It's going to be about a path and skill journey of commas, one after the other, no period. So that's where I view TCC and certainly our entire system, led certainly by Michelle and Henry in their respective roles, but one that, just moves us forward.
And it also connects to something that has been promulgated here in our own area recently with the Choose Tallahassee initiative, not confining education to that, essentially pre-K up through graduate school model, but what do we do with folks who are going for their second or their third act? And we haven't even gotten into that, Henry Mack, but I'm sure that's also a consideration, since life does not end at 65, as perhaps it did heretofore. There's an awful lot of people who, once they get into their 60s and 70s, think, hey, I've always wanted to do such and so, and they're going to remain productive workers, and if not perpetuity, a lot longer than they used to.
Yeah, absolutely. That lifelong learning component is an essential strategy here at the Department of Education. And it, incidentally, to your point, Tom, matters for economic development and well-being. So the retooling, reskilling, and the learning never stops. And it's important that the system is able to provide those kinds of engaging opportunities for residents. I'm a philosophy major, so I'm pretty sure that I'm going to need some reskilling or retooling. In fact, I already do. In Excel certification, Outlook certification, MS Office, et cetera, some valuable certifications, frankly, that I need to go back to school for if I'm going to remain marketable, right, in a 21st century Florida economy. So absolutely.
We're going to have to get together and talk, Eric Bonhoeffer and
oh my gosh,
yes, and some of these guys at some point. That would be fun, Henry.
Oh, Tom, let's do it. We'll probably lose all of your viewership or listenership at once, but I'm happy to talk philosophical theology. That's my jam.
Well, you certainly bring some of those skill sets to the table, and there's a connection. I can see that, Henry. We sure do appreciate you folks being part of our discussion on the development of workforces of the future here on Perspectives. Henry Mack, Chancellor for Career, Technical, and Adult Education with the Florida Department of Education. Thanks for being part of the program today, Henry.
Thank you. This has been absolutely great. Really appreciative.
Also, Michelle Dennard, President and CEO of CareerSource Florida. Thank you, ma'am, for your participation in the show as well today.
Thank you.
And we thank Kim Moore, Vice President for Workforce Innovation, Tallahassee Community College, who had to fly to yet another in an interminable series of Zoom meetings, which is something that we all are very familiar with nowadays. Thank you so much, folks. Perspectives produced by WFSU Public Media in Tallahassee. Thanks going out to Taylor Cox, Paul Dam, Amy Diaz de Villegas, Devin Bittner, Tricia Moynihan, and Lydell Rawls, our Director of Content, Kim Kelling, Executive Producer, and I'm Tom Flanigan. Next week, we're going to take off for Thanksgiving, but we shall return the following week and explore the slow but steady rebirth of Havana, Florida, as a vibrant center for culture, history, and the arts. We'll talk it over in 2 weeks, right here on Perspectives from WFSU Public Media. Take care.